Hey everybody, forgive me, I'm battling a little bit of the end of a flu. So I'm just gonna do something that's a little shorter today, but I wanted to go over the book of Enoch with you guys as far as astrotheology goes. Let's just jump right into it. So the book of Enoch, as you guys can see, okay, we're gonna go through the 12 signs, which I'm gonna do every episode so that you can start to understand. Okay, now Enoch, I believe, was Methuselah's grandfather. I could be wrong on that though. But Enoch, in the Bible, he lived 365 years. And when they do the lineage for all these biblical people, they'll say Abraham lived 900 years, he begat a son, and then he died at this many years. They do this throughout. However, when they get to Enoch, they say he lived 365 years and he was not, for God took him. So Enoch was the first person to actually go to heaven, like Elijah did, like Jesus did, and like supposedly Muhammad did. Enoch was the first one to go to heaven alive. And he later ends up becoming Metatron, which is a whole different conversation for later in the day. But let's just start with the 10 signs. Aquarius, the first sign is Aquarius, which is represented by the man with the water pitcher. Whenever you hear the word son of man, baptism, because this is how you baptize someone. In this picture right here, you see a man with the pitcher pouring it out. That's how you baptize someone. Water, pitcher, fountain, stream, river, lake, pond. They're talking about Aquarius. I'm well aware that Aquarius is an air sign, but astrotheologically, when you're talking about water, it applies to Aquarius, just as it does to the mutable sign Pisces, which is next. Pisces is a sign of the two fish in the water. Pisces is actually a water sign. Okay, so there's water in the first two, and you have to discern based on clues which sign they're talking about. Aries is the ram, and in Aries you have March 21st, which is the spring equinox. It's a 12-hour day and a 12-hour night. It's also the Passover. So the Jews celebrate the Passover on Nisan 14, which is always in Aries. The Passover is when God passes over the houses in Egypt, and anyone that doesn't have the lamb or the ram, Aries, the ram, the lamb, the lamb's blood on the doorpost, the firstborn son gets killed. And the firstborn son death is a trope that happens throughout the Bible, and it goes all the way down until Jesus, the God's first and only born son, dies. It's a trope that goes on. You could talk about Abraham and Isaac. There's just so many examples. Now, it's also the Passover in a different way. In astrotheology, the Passover occurs in Aries on March 21st, when the sun literally passes over the equator. So it's celebrated. In Christianity, it's changed and it becomes the resurrection of God's son. You also have Easter in Aries, okay? So the resurrection of God's son and the Passover are two ways to say the same thing. Excuse me. Whenever you hear ram, lamb, shepherd, ram's horn, or Jews, because the Jews are the people of Aries, they're talking about Aries. Taurus is the bull. When you look at the sky and you see Taurus during the season where it's supposed to be, you know that you need to put the plow on the bull so that you can plant the seeds, so that you can harvest in Virgo and Libra. So whenever you hear bull, ox, calf, or cow being a female bull, they're talking about Taurus. Okay, it's important to know that we have machinery that does that now, the plowing and this and that, but the ancients, they had to rely on the bull. That's why it's a bull in the sky. Gemini is the twins. It's the story of Castor and Pollux Troy, whose sister was Helen of Troy. This goes back to the Greeks. It's the story of Achilles, basically. So whenever you hear twins or brothers, they're talking about Gemini. Cancer is the crab, and it's the sideways moving creature. So it shuffles to the side. Human beings, we don't shuffle to the side unless we're doing a sports drill. Okay, it's just not how we walk. We walk front, we walk diagonal. We don't go back like this. This is not how we walk. The crab does. And the sun metaphorically does that too. So starting on December 25th, it rises a degree on its axis. Then the next day, then the next day, then the next day, then the next day, every day rising a degree till it hits June 21st. Once it hits June 21st, okay, it then stops at that height. That's the summer solstice. It's the highest the sun will ever be. Then it walks sideways for 3 days. It stays at that height. Then it drops a degree on the 25th of June, continuing to drop a degree every day until it hits December 21st. Okay? So whenever you hear crab or beetle, they're talking about Cancer. And I mentioned this before. The beetle The reason it's known as Cancer is because in the Egyptian zodiac, the scarab actually took place of the crab, and the Sphinx actually took place of Leo the lion. Those are the only two changes that have been made from what I can see in tropical astrology in the last 6,000 years or so. In my first presentation, I talked about the Lascaux Caves, which goes back 40,000 years, and the constellations were still known as what they were. Leo is the king. He's the lion. He's the king of the jungle. The ruling planet of Leo is actually the sun. So whenever you're talking about lion, lioness, cub, you're talking about Leo. Virgo. Virgo is the woman holding the wheat stalk. Remember before when we said that you plant in Taurus with the bull? Well, the virgins would cultivate the wheat in Virgo in order to make the bread for the year. So whenever you hear virgin, wheat, grain, seed, barley, corn, for example, people will tell me corn. I get these comments when I do these podcasts constantly that corn is a modern crop. It's not. It's been cultivated for at least 10,000 years, at least 10,000 years. And if you were to do a quick Google search or a DuckDuckGo search, okay, you will find that the time that you cultivate corn is in September, which is Virgo. You could just Google it. I'm not making this up. So that's Virgo. Now, next is Libra, which is the justice, the scales, the balance, the just one. The reason it's the justice is because it judges God's sun as it passes over the fall equinox and begins its descent into winter, into cold, into death. And the Jews always celebrate the new year on the fall equinox. Now, with Libra being the justice, the judgment, the judge, the just one, is there any reason why 8 days after the Jewish New Year, you have a day called Yom Kippur, which is the day of judgment? That's always in Libra, where the Jews fast and don't drink water all day. They go to temple and they pray that God's going to keep them in the book of life for the next year. So any lawly things, divorce, marriage, court, law, justice, judge, the just one, things of that nature, that's Libra, you know. For example, judge, or yeah, that's pretty much it. And then wine, vineyard, wine press, because Libra is also when you press the grapes to make the wine. So you plant in Taurus and then you press it in Libra. Then olive oil too. You press the olives in Libra too. So there's a lot going on in Libra. Scorpio is the scorpion, and he is known as the betrayer. When a scorpion bites you, it leaves an imprint in your skin that looks like a pair of lips. So the ancients would get bit, they'd pull it off and throw it. It would be a bite that looks like it was kissed. It's a pair of lips, but there's poison in it. That's the betrayal. It's a metaphor. And it's why Jesus was betrayed by Judas with a kiss. Judas could have thrown a stone at him. He could have hugged him. He could have just pointed at him, but he gave him a kiss instead. That's why, because that's what he represents. So the sun is judged in Libra and betrayed in Scorpio. Finally, in Sagittarius, the man on the horse with the bow and arrow, the bow and the arrow shoot the sun, inflicting further punishment on the sun and killing it. This is where the sun dies. Why? Because on December 21st, the sun is at its lowest point. It cannot rise any lower. It's dead. It's dead of winter. It remains at its lowest level for 3 days, which is why Jesus was dead for 3 days. When on December 25th, or the birth of God's son, it rises another degree and starts doing that all over again, okay? There's only 6 days a year that the sun is not either rising a degree or lowering a degree. And it's the three following December 21st and June 21st. So whenever you hear horse, bow and arrow, spear, horseman, they're talking about Sagittarius. Finally, Capricorn. Capricorn is the goat, because if you look at the zodiac wheel, Capricorn is at the bottom of the wheel, okay? And basically he likes to climb the mountain. So if you imagine the sun climbing a metaphorical degree a day alongside the zodiac wheel, it starts to climb in Capricorn. And that's why. So with that being said, we can jump right into the book of Enoch. Now, it's important to know that the book of Enoch is still in the Ethiopian Bible. Ethiopia is a very interesting place. In Ethiopia, they have a 13-month calendar. It's 12 months of 30 days and 1 month of 5 days. Their new year is on September 11th. In their book, they have the book of Enoch. I believe they have the book of Esther. They have the book of Jubilees. They have a lot of books that are still in there. And supposedly, in Ethiopia, there is they're guarding the Ark of the Covenant. There's a church that supposedly has it. Now, there was a story that went out on the news a few months ago. I don't know if anybody saw it because it disappeared just as quick as it came in, that 75 people tried to rush this church and they were all killed. And then the story just disappeared. So who knows what's really going on there? You know, maybe some people could speak to it better than I can. But let's go right into it. Chapter 2:1. Observe ye everything that takes place in the heaven, how they do not change their orbits, and the luminaries which are in the heaven, how they all rise and set in order in each of their season, and transgress not against their appointed order. I didn't do a decoding for this because it's just obvious what they're trying to say here. Everything is in its set place. They don't change their orbits. They'll rise and set in each season. So the four seasons of the zodiac, and transgress not against their appointed order. So you're never going to go from Aquarius to Scorpio. It's never going to happen. So it's going to be Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, yada, yada, yada. Okay. Chapter 8.2. Semjaza taught enchantments. Armoros, the resolving of enchantments. Barakiel taught astrology. Kokabel, the constellations. Ezekiel, the knowledge of the clouds. Sariel, the course of the moon. My contention, the reason why this was actually removed from the Bible, that the Western Bible, is because it openly talked about astrotheology. Whereas the Bible itself, sometimes they'll mention the sun, the moon, maybe a planet here or there, or a constellation, even though most of it is deeply encoded. But here they openly talk about it. That's my thought on why it's removed. Now, chapter 14:11. Its ceiling was like the path of the stars and the lightnings. And between them was a fiery cherubim, and the heaven was clear as water. So they mentioned the water. So we know it's going to be Aquarius or Pisces as their water signs, but we're going to need to figure it out. We're going to go back so we can tell which sign they were talking about. 14:13. And I entered that house, and it was hot as fire and cold as ice. The sun has entered either Aquarius or Pisces, as the previous thing mentioned. As those are the winter months, the sun is both a flaming ball that is hot, but it's in the middle of winter, so it's cold as ice. Okay? 14:15. And I beheld a vision, and lo, there was a second house greater than the former, and the entire portal stood open before me, and it was built of flames of fire, and in every respect it so excelled in splendor and magnificence, an extent that I cannot describe to you its splendor and its extent. And its floor was of fire, and above it were the lightnings and the path of the stars, and its ceiling was also a flaming fire. And I looked, and I saw therein a lofty throne. Its appearance was as crystal, and the wheels thereof as the shining sun. So the sun is in its kingdom. It's in Leo. It's the dead of summer. The sun is the ruling planet of Leo, so that's its home. Also, before now, we know they were talking about Aquarius and not Pisces. Why? Because I've mentioned this. The reason you know these were encoded the way they do is because there's patterns to them in the zodiac. They'll always be talking about a sign's neighboring sign or its cross sign, always. So we were trying to figure out if it was Aquarius or Pisces. Leo and Aquarius are opposing signs, so we know that they were talking about Aquarius before. 17:2. And they brought me to the place of darkness and to a mountain to the point whose summit reached to heaven. They're talking about darkness, which is correlated to winter. So it's one of the winter months. And I saw the place of the luminaries and the treasuries of the stars and of the thunder, and in the uttermost depths, where were a fiery bow and arrow in their quiver. Ah, there it is. The man with the bow and the arrow in the quiver, that's Sagittarius. Moving along the zodiac, it's in progression. So what's next? Hold on one sec. I'm sorry, guys. I had to plug the computer in. And they took me to the living waters and to the fire of the west. Aquarius and Pisces are on the left side of the zodiac, therefore the west. The sun is now back to the water sign. And I do the air quotes because Aquarius is not a true water sign, but when you decode astrotheologically, it is. Speaking of water, therefore it can be used as a water sign. 18:2. And I saw the cornerstone of the earth. I saw the four winds which bear the earth and the firmament of heaven. The four winds are the cross that the entire zodiac has. Connecting the equinoxes and the cross with the solstice, it forms a perfect cross. And I saw how the winds stretched out the vaults of heaven. I saw the winds of heaven, which turn and bring the circumference of the sun and all the stars to their setting. So there's a lot of talk early on about astrotheology and astrology. Okay, that's probably why they got rid of it. Okay, because they found all these books in the Bible, and in 100 AD, before the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, in 100 AD, they had something called the Senate of Jamnia. And I always get flack from religious Jews who tell me that that's nonsense. I mean, it's in the Encyclopedia Britannica. You can look it up. You know, it's there. You know, I didn't invent this. What the Senate of Jamnia was in the year 100 AD. 100 AD, believe it or not, the Bible was not canonized. The Old Testament wasn't. It wasn't. The books were out of order. The books would be read out of order. They didn't have a set order for it. So they got a bunch of politicians and a bunch of rabbis to sit down, get together in order to put the books together. That's why the book of Job is not the first book of the Bible, even though it's the oldest story in the Bible. It actually predates Genesis. So they put these in order. But an interesting thing happened. This is 100 AD. Around 70 AD, 30 years before, they had a gospel come out called the Gospel of Luke, which is the oldest gospel in the Bible out of the four. Or was it Luke or Mark? I think it was Mark. The oldest gospel in the Bible came out in 70 AD. And they were discussing whether or not to include it in the Old Testament. Now think for a second. Could you imagine if the Old Testament and the New Testament were just one long testament instead of breaking down the Old and the New? That would change everything. But that's what they decided to do. They decided to leave it out. Okay, so that's what I think. 1813, I saw there 7 stars like great burning mountains, and to me when I inquired regarding them. The 7 stars are also known as the 7 sisters of the Pleiades. Whenever they mention 7 stars, they're talking about the Pleiades, okay? Because that's what they knew. 21:3, again, and there I saw 7 stars of the heaven bound together in it, like great mountains and burning with fire. Again, this one is talking about the Pleiades again. 46:1, and there I saw one who had a head of days, and his head was white like wool, sheep, Aries, and with him was another being whose countenance had the appearance of a man. 46:3, this is the Son of Man who hath righteousness. That's Aquarius. Okay. 48:1, and in that place I saw the fountain of righteousness. Well, the fountain is Aquarius. It's literally, it looks like every fountain that you have out there. It's always some man doing this and pouring water out. That's what's always in the fountain. That's what it is. And all the thirsty drank of them and were filled with wisdom. And in that hour, the Son of Man was named. Again, that's Aquarius, the Son of Man, as I mentioned. 49:1, for wisdom is poured out like water. Aquarius. 49:4, and he shall judge the secret things. Libra, the scales of justice, the judgment, the just one, whatever you want to call it. 51:4, and in those days shall the mountains leap like rams, Aries, and the hills shall also skip like lambs, Aries, satisfied with milk, the Milky Way galaxy, and the center of the Milky Way galaxy is in Sagittarius. Okay, it's important to know too, the Milky Way galaxy was named the Milky Way galaxy as far back as the Egyptian Book of the Dead. So it's not a new title, it's not an English thing, that's how it was called. 56:5, that they may break forth as lions from their lairs, Leo, and as hungry as wolves among the flock, the constellation Lupus, which is the wolf. But the city of my righteousness shall be a hindrance to their horses. Well, the horse is Sagittarius. So in those 2 lines right there, they're talking about 3 different signs. Well, not signs, because Lupus is just a constellation. But they're talking about 2 constellations and 3 constellations, I should say. 59:1, in those days mine eyes saw the secrets of the lightnings and of the lights and the judgments they execute. Again, that's Libra the judge. They're talking about the stars in Libra because they execute judgment. The lights execute judgment. That stars in Libra. 67, and on that day were 2 monsters parted. A female monster, named Leviathan, to dwell in the abysses of the ocean over the fountains of water. So they're talking about Pisces, the two fish, the two water monsters, and Aquarius, the fountain of water, as I just got finished explaining the fountain. 65.6, they have learned all the secrets of the angels and the violence of the Satans. Okay, this is not astrology, but I wanted to make this very clear. Satan, the word in Hebrew is Hashatan. Hashatan literally means adversary. Okay, two basketball teams playing against each other are Satans to one another. In fact, Satan is not a little devil with horns and a pitchfork, a red one. In fact, in the 900s, the earliest drawings that we even have of Satan, he's actually blue, not even red. Okay, there's no Satan. 69.2, and through the oath, the sun and the moon complete their course and deviate not from their ordinances from eternity to eternity. Makes sense? And through the oath, the stars complete their course, and he calls them by their names. The stars each have a name, and they answer him from eternity to eternity. And in like manner, the spirits of the water and of the winds and all the zephyrs and the pass from all the quarters of the winds. It's telling you everything is set. Look, let me put it to you this way. The sun tells the hour of the day. The moon tells the day of the month. The zodiac tells the month of the year. It's a perfect calendar. Okay? It was created for us that way. Okay? Don't mistake us in this community who find religion abhorrent or literal belief in the biblical translations lacking, for a better word, with the idea that God doesn't exist. The book of the courses of the heavenly luminaries. So this is where they start getting into a little bit more astrotheology. Not that there wasn't before. 72.3. And I saw 6 portals in which the sun rises and 6 portals in which the sun sets. The sun sits in each sign for 2 hours a day, making 12 signs times 2 equals our 24-hour day. Okay? Now, the next passage, the very next passage, 72:14. On that day, the day becomes longer than the night, and the day becomes double the night, and the day becomes 12 parts, and the night is shortened and becomes 6 parts. That's talking about the summer solstice, June 21st, the longest day of the year. Next passage, very next passage. On that day, the day is equalized with the night and becomes of equal length. Well, that's just the equinoxes, okay? That's in September and that's in March. That's in Aries and Libra. The very next passage, 72.26. And on that day, the night becomes longer and amounts to double of the day. Winter solstice, the shortest day of the year, December 21st. 82:19. And the sheep pair and become pregnant. And all the fruits of the earth are gathered in, and everything that is in the fields and the winepress. These things take place in the days of his dominion. So the sheep represents Aries, and its cross sign. Remember how I mentioned there's always a pattern you're going to find with this? Here you go. Its cross sign is Libra, the wine season, hence the wine press. 87:4. And one said unto me, remain here till thou seest everything that befalls those elephants, camels, and asses, and the stars and the oxen, and all of them. The elephant nebula is in Cephas. Camelopardalis borders Cephas. Okay? Acellus borealis, or the northern donkey. Boots is the ox constellation. Could also make an argument that it's Taurus, the bull, but there's multiple meanings. There's multiple meanings for it. The same way a water sign can be Aquarius or Pisces in astrotheology. When you're talking about the serpent, the snake in the Garden of Eden, you can talk about Ophiuchus, the serpent bearer. You can talk about Hydra, the sea serpent. There's multiple meanings that come through at times. Okay? 89.12. But the bull, Taurus, which was born from him, begat a wild black boar, the Andromeda constellation or boar, and a white sheep, Aries. And thereafter, those 3 were clothed in white and had seized me by my hand, who had taken me up before, and the hand of the ram, Aries, also seizing hold of me. They took me up and sat me down in the midst of their sheep, Aries, before the judgment, Libra, took place, opposing signs again. 960506. Woe to you who devour the finest of the wheat. That's Virgo. And drink wine in large bowls. Libra. Those are connecting signs, neighboring signs. Woe to you who drink water from every fountain. Aquarius. So it's going from Virgo to Libra, connecting sign, to Aquarius. So it's just following the path of the zodiac. That's all it's doing. It's not jumping all over the place. It's not doing anything crazy. It's not a stretch. It's just following the path. The appendix. The last words. And the sinners shall cry aloud and see them resplendent, and they indeed will go where the days and seasons are prescribed for them. They're just talking about the zodiac and the constellations. These are the books that we've done so far, guys. That was the book of Enoch. Okay? These are the ones we've done so far. So by my count, we're going to do Jubilees next. Now, a Jubilee is a period of time. It's 7 times 7, which is 49 days. The interesting thing about 49 days, too, okay, why it's such an interesting, 49 is such an interesting number, is because the Buddhists, I'm trying to think of the best way to put this. So they mourn for 49 days. It's 7 weeks of 7 days, okay? They also say that the soul enters the body on the 49th day. And do you know what modern day scans have shown? They've shown that on the 49th day of a woman's gestation, the pineal gland becomes visible. That's where the soul enters. So we've got Jubilees. And then I've got the Gospel of Thomas, Mary Magdalene, Melchizedek, Philip, and Judas. Those aren't very long, so I'm going to do those 5 together. Then we're going to start going to books not biblically related that still are based on astrotheology. In case you think this is just biblically related, it's not. The Emerald Tablets of Thoth, the Enuma Elish, the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Code of Hammurabi, the Quran, the Egyptian Book of the Dead. I'm going to keep these in this order, okay? So I'm going to leave this up on the screen for a minute so you guys could see it. And then I've highlighted Jubilees over here. Those are the first 3 that we've done so far, okay? And that's it. So I wanted to thank you guys for putting up with me being sick. And I will talk to you soon. Thank you.